All right, welcome back to another Serious Angler podcast. Pretty cool show today. We have on Mr. Adam Deakin, who is a host on the Business from the Bass Boat podcast, which is pretty cool. It's basically a business-oriented podcast of the fishing industry. Telling the business side of the fishing industry, diving into different avenues of the fishing industry that not many people focus on. I mean, we all focus on the fishing, the catching, the stories, the anglers. But Adam does a pretty cool job of highlighting these different behind the scenes stuff and these different businesses and the avenues that people can be creative with in the fishing industry. Gets them on his podcast to talk to them about a bunch of different things. So check that out. It'll be down in the description below. I'm pretty excited to have him on here. But before we get into today's podcast, I want to say a huge shout out to Douglas Outdoors for sponsoring the Serious Angler podcast and myself. It is a huge help. I cannot wait to actually, I'm going out tomorrow. We have a lot of smallmouth that are up on bed, and I'm going to take out my 724XF, my LRS, and go wreak some havoc on some smallmouth on beds. Pretty excited to do that. So a huge shout out to Douglas Outdoors. Thank you guys for all your help. If you guys have not checked out Douglas already, go to douglasoutdoors.com, check out some rods, and find a dealer near you and put one in your hands. Feel free to message me on social media if you have any questions on the rods. If you're curious, you're in the market for them, just let me know. So today, without further ado, let's get with Adam here, get him on the podcast and pick his brain and talk a little bit about fishing in Colorado. So that's pretty cool. I'm pretty excited for that. So let's get to it. We are recording. Mr. Adam Deakin. What's going on, man?
Not too much, buddy. How are you?
Doing good. We finally have somebody on the podcast who has really good audio on the other side, better than my audio.
I got a mic. That's about it. It's hooked up, so I guess we're good to go there.
Yeah. People could definitely know. I mean, if they didn't listen to the intro, they already know that you're definitely into podcasts and you host podcasts because you already have. If people watch on YouTube, you see the setup already. So this guy knows what he's doing. How you doing? How's the fishing been? I know you had a derby on Saturday. How'd that go?
Yeah, man. So it was actually Sunday. So it went well. In Colorado, we don't have big tournaments, right? But there's honestly a decent amount of anglers here that fish high level and will travel. And so it was kind of a strong field for Colorado because no other tournaments are really going on. And so it was an ABA event, which ABA, is kind of across the nation and a lot on the West Coast. So it was on Pueblo Reservoir, which is kind of a desert lake in southern central Colorado. And it's honestly, for anyone who's been out west, it's similar to Lake Mead. It's very similar to Lake Mead, and it's what it looks like, bluff walls, really clear water. And so it's cool, too, because the water temp's so much warmer down there than where I live. I live in northern Colorado, and it's, they're just getting to the spawn now. Whereas, well, I guess we're probably going to start seeing them on beds this weekend and going forward. But those fish have been spawning, and they were still on beds this last weekend. And so I wasn't able to get down there until Saturday afternoon. My partner I was fishing the team tournament with, he had to work Saturday morning. So we took off and got there about 1 o'clock. And so I knew, I was thinking to myself, and I was kicking myself, that it would have been nice to have the full day to pre-fish because they were going to be on beds. And the name of the game there, right, is just traveling around, finding every, hauling butt on your trolling motor through every pocket and marking the bigger ones, or catching them to see what they weigh, and then putting them back and catching them the next day. Yeah. And so the wind blew too, so we only really had an hour of that, and I found one keeper. And on that lake, the length limit is 15 inches, and Colorado fish are really small. So it was hard to, on that lake, if it's the springtime, you can catch them and catch a solid limit. Well, when I say a solid limit, I mean like between 10 and 13 pounds. It's kind of like a small Lake Mead. But anyways, so I found one that was a keeper, and then I said, all right, we're going to have to junk fish or find something else tomorrow. And it had caught some other fish doing just everything from throwing a jig, and I actually had some come up and eat a topwater. And so we went out Sunday and kind of got after it. We went and started shallow and throwing a topwater. It wasn't really happening, and went to that bedfish, caught that bedfish, and there was 32 boats in this tournament. So, and where we first started was a lot of people started in, but they didn't touch that bedfish. And then we just started junk fishing, man. I mean, did everything from a little bit of flipping. And this lake has largemouth, smallmouth, and spotted bass in it, and it was kind of cool. Our bag, we had all of them. It was cool. We had a keeper spot, and then 3 largemouth, and then a smallmouth. And I think on that lake, the largemouth way heavier, so it's always good to have the largemouth. But one had I guess one bigger smallmouth. But so we ended up in 4th, and was a pretty good check because that many boats were in it. So took some money home, definitely paid for our trip and next entry fee for the next one. So it was good.
There you go. That's all you can ask for, right? It's being competitive.
Yeah. That's exactly right. That's right.
That's pretty sweet. I've never been on a fishery that has all 3. That's got to be pretty cool.
Dude, it is. And it's kind of amazing that it's like that there, because there's also wiper in that lake, and there's big wiper, and so it's like competitive for those predator species, as far as the food supply goes. But the spotted bass, they almost turn into ocean fish, right? Like, I mean, in the summertime, they'll just go chase bait. And so you really only see, from the tournament side of things, you only see the spots show up in the spring, like early spring, and then sometimes in the fall. But in the summer, like in the middle of the summer, or even the winter, it's hard to find them because they just go and they'll just suspend and chase bait. And like, you can still go to like, not a brush pile, but like a rock pile out deep and catch the smallmouth or something in the summer. And some of the largemouth stay shallow and you can go do that. But it's weird. The spots don't get weighed after that. I mean, you can catch littler ones, but the bigger spots just turn into ocean fish, man. And they'll just go chase bait. And I haven't been able to figure them out. I don't know anyone that has. It'd be really cool if you did, because the spots get really heavy. I mean, they're just so like spotted bass are such like a fish, and so they're cool. But it is kind of cool to see all 3 species, especially on beds. I mean, you go into a pocket and it's like smallmouth, largemouth, spotted bass all in the same area on a bed. It's kind of neat.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Is it like a clear water lake then? Like, is it deep clear water to have those spots?
Yeah, it is, man. It's pretty clear. Not quite as like clear as like a Lake Mead, but very clear. And it actually, and this is like, and I always laugh. I would laugh at it when I would see it. But that lake would be in the Bassmaster. Like the Bassmaster Top 100 lakes. You know how they have them. So I think they would just try and go out and showcase different states, right? So like Pueblo Reservoir was always in there. Like it'd be in like the 70s or something, right? But it'd be like, no way. Like this is not. And I think the only reason they were putting it in there was because of the diversity of it. Make it cool, because it's all 3 species, and but it's not like they really get big in there. I mean, I think big bass is a 4.5 pound smallmouth, but they don't grow like they do up your way by any means.
Yeah, I mean, at the tournament I had on Saturday, I mean, if you caught like a 4.5, I mean, most people have that in their bag, but like if you want to win, you better try to call that thing out. I mean, I think our smallest one was 4.8, I believe, and that's tough. Like, in the guys who wanted the 28-pound bag, and that's all 5s right there. That's pretty all it is. 5 and a 6. So it's tough, but it's got to be pretty cool having that diversity, though. You just got to strap that Panoptics on front deck and get to find those schoolers.
Yeah. Well, and I got Panoptics this year, and it's going to be cool this summer. I'm gonna our other lake up here that I'm real close to is Horsetooth Reservoir, and it's only out in there, and they get out and chase bait in the summertime and hang out deep, and it's going to be cool to really dial it in. I've messed with it this fall, and it's cool to like be throwing a jerk bait and watch it come back and fish react to it, and whether they decide to eat it or not. But the only downside I think to that is you look at it so much sometimes that it kind of hurts you. Like rather than like trying to find your jerk bait, like I think sometimes it'd be better if you just went down the bank and just kept fishing. Yeah. You're sitting there looking at it the whole time.
Yeah, and that's the one reason I'm hesitant to get it. Because for me, I would just use it on some of our glacial lakes here where smallmouth in the summer, they just ride that thermocline and do exactly what those spots do. They chase bait. That's the only reason I could see getting it, because like I feel like I'm just going to lose touch with whatever instincts I have and just rely on that graph. Like for me, it's, side imaging or 360 is going to be probably as far as I go, because I'm so afraid of losing touch with what I have right now. You know what I mean? But
that's reasonable to think about.
Yeah, right. So it's, I don't know, if you can limit yourself, I'm sure it's perfect. But I'm sure you just gotta turn that off for a while. Just get back to basics.
Yeah, I think the only other benefit to it, and it's similar to like a 360 that you're saying, would be that where I used it for sure and will use it more is if you're going down the bank and you scan, and it's not that you're necessarily seeing a fish, but you see a specific rock, right? Like
Mm.
you wouldn't have probably casted to, especially if it's not clear water, where you're just going down the bank and you're casting down the bank and you kind of scan out and you're like, oh wait, there's a rock 60 feet away from you, make a cast and catch one off of it. So that's kind
Yeah.
of cool is where you can see that rock before you get to it on your sonar.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can relate to that in the terms of 360. The reason why I want to get 360 is, there's my buddy and I were out fishing the same body of water. We had both realized the same pattern, except he had 360 and all I had was side imaging, where once I mark those boulders, they're already past me, where he
Yep.
can look out front and the water's not super clear, so it's not like it's easy. You can just pick them out, sight fishing them, and that's
Sure.
the pattern we found was taking a flat side and creeping them over those boulders, and that's when you're gonna get smashed. So
Yeah.
he was able to do it. He was going down, and he would just say, "Okay, boulder here, cast, forward." And I would have to graph a stretch before I could go back and then pick out where those boulders were. It's so much, and people. This is where I enjoy this argument because people like to call, saying all these electronics is cheating. Especially those traditional guys will say, electronics are cheating. I don't like to call it cheating. I like to call it, it's a difference between a 15-20 fish day and a 40-50 fish day. You're way more efficient. It's all it is.
Yeah.
It's not cheating. At the end of the day, you still got to catch the damn fish. It's just you're way more efficient in how you're finding it. And honestly, I think if you use electronics right, I think it teaches you so much. It really does. Yeah.
So much. It's crazy what we're doing, and I just every year something else comes out. It's going to be crazy. With 5 years from now, how much different it's going to be.
Yeah, I'm like, it's funny because you look at what's out and you're like, how can you come up with anything new? I mean, are you gonna have like, what is it called? Like thermal, on each fish that's fishing? Like, it's just gonna light up each fish that's in the area or what?
Yeah.
I mean, in essence, you kind of have something like that with side imaging and stuff, but like, I don't know. I'm kind of scared to see what they possibly could come out with. It's curious though too. Like in the same argument, is there a line? When tournaments will be like, you can't use this.
I know. I think about that a lot, and I don't know. Here's my reasoning why I don't think there will be a line. I'm not saying that's good or bad, but what I'm saying is that manufacturers, right, of these companies, they're pushing their highest high-end products onto pros. And if fans are sitting there watching, and they're watching a limited thing, right, then they're probably not going to buy the highest end of that item, right? Like it's almost like sports things, right, with baseball bats being metal versus wood or that kind of stuff. I mean, I think there's reason sometimes to limit that stuff, but from the business aspect of it, I think they would be, I don't know, hesitant to do that because I think there's people who watch tournament fishing, Bassmaster and Major League Fishing that aren't tournament guys, but I still think the majority, especially with the Bassmaster with the FLW, of the viewers are super oriented into tournaments. And when something like that's happening, that's a reason why people bet bass boats with 250 horsepower, right? It's capped at 250 horsepower. Whereas if it was 200 horsepower, there's guys who buy them, but they're not going to fish tournaments, right? Because they can't. Yeah. So it's like if those electronics came out that were not the highest top of the line, that's what guys would be buying. And I think that companies are going to want people to be buying the highest end, the newest, the greatest, that innovation that happened.
Yeah, you make a good point there. Yeah, if the companies are the one providing sponsorship money, and the leagues are going to have no choice but to say, yeah, we'll allow it. It's just, I mean, especially when they say, the rule is, as long as it's available to everybody, right? So it's true. It kind of it doesn't even add a cap to it. I mean, it's just as long as it's there, use it.
Well, yeah. And I think that, like, obviously in a deep event, right, they really, really play a role. And they play a role all the time. And there's guys who live and die by them. But, like, there's still John Coxes out there, right? Like, there's still guys who don't even use them. They're going to fish in 5 feet or less in every tournament, no matter what time of year it is, or, 10 feet or less or whatever it is. It's crazy.
Yeah.
There's guys that are that good instinctually and would rather be on the bank than anywhere else.
Yeah, electronics, like we mentioned, they truly do help your efficiency out on the water. But at the end of the day, you can't beat an angler who just has those instincts that are better than anybody else.
I
But then
agree.
also a very cool argument that I've heard in recent was down south, shallow fishing is getting so much better because so many anglers are diving into these electronics and are fishing offshore. Where now that offshore fishing became this great thing because you have a higher percentage of catching these fish because they've seen less baits, they've been pressured less. But now that more guys are coming offshore, the shallow
Yeah,
fish are being pressured less, and that's why you're seeing more bags come from fishing shallow. It's a cool
dude, I
switch
like
to see
that.
that. It's weird.
Yeah,
It's awesome
good
though.
theory.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
it's awesome.
crazy. That's exactly right. Like when apparently when you hear stories of guys when like they first started fishing offshore, I mean those fish hadn't seen anything. They haven't seen a deep diving crankbait, right? That is running
Yeah,
through. And so that's crazy. That's a really good point. It makes me want to anytime I'm fishing a tournament down south to go shallow, to hit the bank.
yeah. It's cool because you can't exclude it anymore. And like you said, John Cox. I mean, he's the epitome of it. You never exclude shallow. One way or another, there's going to be fish shallow somewhere.
Every time. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it,
Yeah.
it also goes back to it's a cool argument too because when you think about it, I think of it as like a Lake Erie. There's these giant fish that realize they don't all have to go up to 5, 6, whatever depth of water to spawn. They'll spawn out in 20 to 30 if they can, if they have the visibility for it. So
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that electronics though is huge because you'll be bed fishing and you'll be finding little circles on your side imaging and marking them and trying to catch that waypoint.
That's so cool.
It's
That's
wild to see the differences in those. But so we're
yeah.
already 15 minutes into this podcast, and I have neglected to ask my beginning question that I ask everybody, and that's
All right.
how you got into fishing and who kind of ignited that passion. So let's get into that before we get too
All
distracted.
right. Yeah, man. Yeah. We do podcasts where we talk a lot. But yeah, so man, I would say probably the oldest memory that I have fishing would have been actually out by you. My dad is from Pennsylvania, New York border, and with my grandpa and my dad out there catching bluegills in a pond. And dude, that ignited it for me. I mean, if I look back at like my childhood, any family trip we were going on, no matter where it was, I wanted to be fishing. Related to whatever it was. If we were on a trip at the ocean, at the beach somewhere, right? I was bringing some kind of fishing rod or trying to convince my parents to go on a guided trip or anything like that. Or if it was a bluegill pond in Iowa, right? Like anywhere we go, that's what I wanted to be doing. And it wasn't specific to bass fishing at that time, but it was that, and it's been a passion of mine forever.
That's awesome. Sweet man. So what's the goal here? Like, do you have an end goal, or do you have
Uh,
a level that you want to strive for?
yeah, I mean, I think everyone's sits there and says you want to make it to the top level or anything like that, and I guess it's kind of go in the background of how I got into tournament fishing, but I was playing sports in high school and enjoyed sports, but also just really loved the outdoors and hunting and fishing. And then in the winter, there's a lot of ice fishing tournaments in Colorado. And I was like, oh, these are cool. Way you can kind of compete. And I mean, there's guys who win ice tournaments consecutively and figure things out. But for me, it was a lot more kind of luck oriented, especially with the live bait factor and that kind of stuff with ice fishing. So I was kind of just looking on the internet for something to do in the spring related to fishing, and I saw a bass club, like a junior bass club, and so got into that. And it's mostly at that point you're fishing around ponds, right, with like a scorecard, measuring boards and that kind of thing. And then we have a state tournament, and it took second in the state tournament, but you had to win it to be able to go to the national. And the next year, I won it with my partner, and so we went to Kentucky Lake at the national and the Bassmaster High School Series National. And on the first day, we were in second place, like 22 pounds, fishing ledges on Kentucky Lake. I was like, dang, this is sweet. This is the real deal. And there's a bunch of boats there and everything else. And we ended up slipping a little, and I think we finished in 13th. And I was like, this is what I want to do. This is a blast. And being from Colorado, it's hard to kind of go and fish some of those places. And it's just so much less of a known thing here, right? So, followed through with that, went to college here at CSU and fished in college tournaments, made a national championship there. Didn't do great there, but enjoyed all of it and enjoyed fishing all the tournaments. And so, I mean, as far as like an end goal, I don't know. I'd like to at some point get to a point where I'm giving it my all and going as far as I can go, if that makes sense. Whether that's the Costa Series and Open Series or if it's the highest level, right? But I would like to push for that, and I'm goal oriented in that sense to go that way. And the tournament fishing to me is the top of the line. I'd much rather do that than fun fishing anytime. I just enjoy that competitive aspect of it.
Nice. And I wish you best of luck. So what's the route that you're contemplating on taking to get to that point?
Yeah, man. I mean, so that's a really good question. And I've thought about it a lot. And here's my thought process, almost kind of like a couple of guys, right? But I think that I'm competitive in the state, very competitive in the state, and fishing like the Bassmaster Federation tournaments, right, or the Bass Nation, and then the TBF tournaments that get you to qualify for that All-American package, that kind of stuff. So I'm still going to continue to do that. My goal is to start doing more of the Open/FLW Costa side as a co. And my thought process there is your investment's quite a bit less, right? Like, I mean, I still have my boat and fishing local stuff, but I think it's really important right now to learn behind some of these guys, especially this year. So I'm going to try and fish all 4 of the Central Opens as a co-angler. So first one's in June on Arkansas River in Oklahoma. But I don't know, man. I think there's sometimes I think there's a lot of guys who don't necessarily swallow their pride and are willing to fish behind someone. And I think that I really haven't fished behind too many people. And I think that's an important step. And I think it's a super big learning curve to learn some of these other lakes that you've never been on, and that sort of, and just see their decision making behind those guys. So it's, to me, and I feel competitive in that stance of fishing as a co-angler. And so my goal is to fish as many of those mid-level events, right? The Costa, the Bassmaster Open side as a co, and see where that takes me, and see if, hey, listen, this is, going forward and I'm making progress here, and then eventually take the front seat there and go on the boater side of those level events. But that's kind of my goal right now, is to say, hey, look, I fished kind of a lot of different lakes across the country in college and high school, and I still feel like I don't want to go into a tournament ever not thinking that I have a chance to win it, right? Like, there's no point in going. So I don't feel that I could go necessarily win one of those unless everything worked out. So I would like to fish as a co behind some of those guys and really take that route and take a step back and fish hard on that front. Yeah,
you're looking at taking the old Chad Smith route of things.
So I was gonna say, dude, Chad Smith, man, that guy did it exactly right, man. Right now I've got the pickup with the mattress in the back on a topper, like literally Chad Smith. That'd be a cool goal, man. But work makes that hard, but trying to save up as many vacation days to be able to go do that sort of stuff.
There you go. I wish you the best. But being a co-angler, that's something I've looked into, but for me, I look at it, and it's like my biggest nightmare is getting stuck with a jerk-off boater that, whether it's boat positioning or just not a enjoyable person to be around in general. I mean, what are you going to do if you do find yourself in a situation? I mean, are you just going to be like, well, crap, and just kind of just throw in the towel? Or, have you thought about that?
Yeah, man, I have, because I've definitely been a boater a lot of the times where I have a co-angler in like a state tournament, right? Where, I'm like, catching them on beds or something. Like, that guy's kind of screwed, right? Like, I have these fish marked. He's just going to be throwing a Senko in the middle of a pocket behind me and trying to catch one, and that's all you can do. I think the way to look at it would be to have a positive attitude and just do anything you can. I mean, they can cast with real finesse type baits and just getting bites, because I think that's the thing on the co-angler side. I think it's a lot more important to try and get a limit of whatever that limit is. It's not like you're trying to chase big ones necessarily, because you have to be consistent enough to make the final day. So, yeah, like, you're trying to fish for fish behind a guy, it's probably going to be a lot more finesse stuff. And if there's a guy just being just a jerk to you, you're going to have to figure out a way to catch fish behind him and just, take everything with a grain of salt and just try and shoot it out and try and catch them, I guess, because I've heard plenty of stories on both sides of that happening, and it happens all the time.
Yeah. Well, we're going to do a little mental training segment here because I'm curious on how your thought process works. So you're a co-angler, and this just came to my mind. So I want to see how there's no wrong answer here. I'm just curious how you would approach this because I don't know how the hell I would approach this. So say you're fishing, you're a co, and a guy's fishing an offshore spot. The way he has his boat situated, obviously he's, angled his boat towards that. So his, he's facing forward, front of the boat, and you're in the back. So obviously you don't want to cast forward because.
Yeah.
So how do you approach that?
Well, I guess I've actually been in that situation. Now it's a little different when it's like a specific rock pile, right? Well, even then, man, and I don't know, from the times where I've been in Kentucky, that kind of part of the country in the summer, say it's a summer, right? They're on the ledges or they're on brush piles out deep. When it's not sunny, it seems like when it's cloudy, those fish spread out a little and they won't be super tight to that brush. You can kind of catch them around. You don't have to be making that perfect cast. But I was fishing actually before the high school national. My partner and I decided to go down a month before and fish as co-anglers on what was the Costa Series on Kentucky Lake. And the main reason was just to see it, never been down there, and then also talk to those boaters while you're fishing and just say, hey, look, we're some high school kids looking to come down here. Do you have any thoughts of what these fish are going to be doing a month from now? And kind of have that kind of conversation with some folks. And so that actually happened. I mean, I had a guy, actually this is the perfect example that you brought that up because it was a ledge tournament, right? These fish are out deep, and I drew 2 boaters, and I didn't make the third day. But the first day, my guy was a real nice guy, but was very adamant on, not hey man, cast behind the windshield, right? And I'm totally trying to respect him and completely and saying doing this sort of thing. But it was ledges, so they were all along the ledge, and he was just kept going around and he turned off his graphs too. I mean, I didn't know where we were, what he was fishing exactly. He was just making casts, and he was a nice guy just talking. But I was able to still catch fish bombing random casts, man. And I was just fan casting behind him, throwing a football jig, and every once in a while I would load up and I'd stick one. And so and I'd feel like there were shell beds. There were shell beds all around us. So in that situation, it's a little different than what you're saying because it's not like a specific point. Because you're kind of in trouble there, right? But I think the idea would be to stay positive with that guy and be netting his fish, high-fiving him if he's catching them, because he may return that favor. Because the second day, I drew a guy who was awesome, dude. And we got to this community hole first, and he was making casts off the front, and he had his limit, and I had 3 or something. And he goes, hey, man, step up here with me. And I was fishing out the front with him, dude. I mean, we were throwing casts to this specific point on this ledge. There were 3 different spots where he was having me make casts to as a high schooler with a jig. And I mean, I had 18 pounds. And I was like, dang, this is sweet. Like, this guy just completely opened it up. And he had, I don't know, 21 pounds or something. But he was just nice enough to let that happen. So I think I would try to stay positive as I could and just try and help him in any way that he needs to be able to have him say, all right, man, hey, let's go. I've got another bank. We can go down and you go catch your limit or whatever it is. And so that's my thought process on it, is just trying to probably be as nice and as positive as I could, because that can absolutely, it probably will exactly happen.
Yeah, so just kind of being nice to the point where he wants to just shift his boat a little bit so it gives you some casting room. Just shift a little bit, yeah. Hope you get a nice little wind. He doesn't have an Ultrex, so you can just shift the boat a little bit, yeah.
Exactly.
That's cool, though. That's an interesting. It's so different. It's such a different world being a co-angler. I've never been in a situation, but that's. Now, you mentioned getting up on the front deck. Now, that probably wasn't with like a Bassmaster tournament or anything like that, right? Because I believe that's against the rules, right?
I don't know if it's against the rules. I don't know if it's against the rules if the boater says, hey, come up here. I think the boater has to allow you to.
Okay.
This was in an FLW Costa, and he said, hey, come up to the front. You can cast off the front.
Okay.
So, I mean, I see what you're saying, but I think that rule's in place for if you've got a guy who's a co-angler who's not affecting at all.
Okay.
But I don't know the specific rule. Maybe there is a rule in place where it says, hey, you can't even come up here even if your boater tells you. But I don't know. I think that's a little bit silly because if the boater's saying, hey, come up to the front, or
Yeah.
or what if this happens, dude? I mean, what if you're sitting there with your Ultrek in the wind and you're casting off the back, right? You know what I
True.
mean? If the boat's
Yeah.
having to make that cast off the back, what's he? You're both going to be off the back, you know? Like so.
True.
So I don't know. I mean, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. I maybe it's a Bass Open thing, or I'm not sure because I heard I can't quote exactly where this is from. I can't remember, but there was a story of a guy whose fish, I think his fish or his bag, either got DQ'd because the co-angler stepped foot on the front deck when netting his fish. I'm trying to remember which angler it was, but basically they watched film and they came back and that the angler's fish, I think, got DQ'd because that co-angler stepped foot on the front deck. I'm gonna have to look it up after this. If anybody knows what I'm talking about, leave it on the comments. But
Yeah, that's crazy.
yeah. So I'm gonna have to look it up because this is really bugging me. Well, you know what? We're gonna look it up right here. Let's see if we're gonna do a quick search. If it doesn't come up, we won't spend much time on it.
All right.
Let's see. Boat. Let's see. Anglers bag DQ from co-angler stepping on front deck. Let's see if that comes up with anything. I'm gonna have to really look this up afterwards. Let's see. There we go. FLW series tournament rules and format.
That's what the series is
That
now.
might be it, right? Let's see. Person of information. Pairings. Sportsmanship. That's not it. Boat operation. Maybe this is it. Let's see. Co-anglers will fish from back deck or seating area boat only. Pros have complete control. Co-anglers may operate the trolling motor or the outboard, but may not fish any time from the front deck. Pros may not request that they don't fish any pros.
No, I need to know this stuff. I guess I'm fishing the open, so not the series.
Co-anglers are not allowed to have more than 7 rods.
Yeah, they limit
I know
that stuff. Yeah, which I'm kind of okay with because I've got an 18.5-foot Legend, and it's a small boat, and so it's a pain when I have a co-angler that brings like a giant gear bag and 19 rods. So I respect that. I'd rather just have a couple reels and have 5 rods, in the boat and figure it out.
Oh yeah, when I go fish with a buddy, I don't bring more than 4. But it's just like
Yeah.
I feel like I've seen video, or not, like it's not tournament stuff, but like when people go to fish with their buddy and they're just bringing like 14 freaking rods, like they're having to bear hug this thing of like what? Like I feel like as a boater, like I see that coming at me, I'm like, oh god, here we go. Like how do you even strap those all down? It's crazy to me. It's nuts. But we're gonna transition here real quick because I want to bring this up as one of the main reasons why I wanted to have you on here is because you also we mentioned it earlier, but you also host a podcast, a business from the bass boat. So talk about that. What started it? What ignited that?
Yeah, man. So the biggest thing for me is I kind of like with what you said, honestly, on my show is I found podcasts and my Spotify at the time I used Spotify, my music down, like my time on my music has steadily decreased a lot every year. And for my internships in college, I was and still do work for a farm and ranch real estate firm, but was driving a lot of traveling a lot of country, and I just love listening to podcasts for that matter, the Joe Rogans, right? And those kind of podcasts, and I saw the fishing podcast and found a couple that I really, really liked, and was thinking, man, this space I think is just going to grow from here, and it has significantly. But my biggest thing for me is it's kind of another passion of mine besides the fishing stuff is I really love hearing the stories of how businesses got founded around specifically a passion. And in kind of these passion-driven markets, the outdoor world, the bass fishing world, those kinds of things. So I kind of set the goal out to have a podcast where I'd bring on business founders, as well as anglers, kind of everything fishing and hunting related. But I'd like to spend more of my time towards those business owners that founded a company. So my favorite guest that I've had on right now is, well, let's see, not which one I want to talk about. I guess let's go ahead. I mean, Gary Dobbins was probably my favorite, and that's because he's just an awesome West Coast angler and all that kind of stuff. But he started that rod company from the ground up, and it's just awesome how he founded everything with that. And so I love hearing those stories on how guys created those companies and that business side of the whole fishing industry, everything like that. So I kind of saw that as like a niche within a niche, right? And so that's kind of my goal for the show. I still bring on anglers, just if I have a friend that's like, hey, he's really good at throwing big swim baits, I want to hear about that. And I think some of my too. And so I bring on guys like that. But the main goal of the show is that sort of stuff. And so that's where it all started for me. And it's been a big learning process. And I started it, I guess, 3 months ago at this point. And it's been a blast, man. And it was cool to have you on and talk about your podcast too, to have that insight of both of us kind of starting stuff.
Yeah. So here's a question for you. And I don't know if you got some secret to it. If it's like a secretive method, then by all means, you don't need to share it. Just tell me to shut up. But how do you go and approach these business founders on being on the podcast? Because some of them are tough to get in contact with, especially getting the time.
Dude, absolutely. It's been hard, man. I'll say that. Like, and more than anything though, it's been networking with friends of mine, or with even you interview someone and on the podcast, and then you say, hey, do you have anyone else in mind that would be interested within the industry to come on after you've experienced this? And if you enjoyed the podcast, would love for you to send me some information, or not even that, just say, hey, who do you think would be cool to have on? And then when you reach out to that person, say, hey, look, I had so-and-so on my podcast, and they had recommended that possibly you'd be interested on coming on, would like to see if you'd be interested in coming on. And so, but there's been plenty of emails, man, that are sent out that don't ever get responded to, right? It's been a process, and definitely is tough, but I would say that's the biggest thing, is networking and utilizing those contacts that you make, because everyone kind of knows someone that has something related to that. So it's been cool to kind of get in front of guys like that.
Yeah. So what are your goals here with this podcast? Is it kind of just something you're doing as a pastime, something you just enjoy and just want to continue it? Or is there like a certain place you want to take this thing?
Yeah, man. Well, I think it's good to always have goals. I enjoy it. I enjoy the pastime, and I enjoy really hearing these guys' stories. And I think that the listeners that I do have respond to those podcasts the best. So I would like to make it more of a national level, right, to where business owners, are coming on and talking about how they created that business, or even a new business coming in, right, and that sort of stuff. So my goals with it are to grow it for sure, and build a bigger platform, and be able to talk to some of these guys, and bring in some of my fishing stuff that's going along the way. But I'd say that's the main goal, is just to grow it and make it bigger. But I'm enjoying it during the process for sure.
That's awesome, man. Well, keep it up. You've given me more stuff to distract myself with. So it's in the whole queue amongst the Bass Talk and the Ike Live Bass U, because I do enjoy the business side of things. Just because somebody like myself trying to work in the industry, it gives you some tips. You can learn some things from it, which is pretty cool. So I'm gonna dive into that archive of yours and get to learning some different things. So it's pretty exciting stuff. So
appreciate it.
So last question about the podcast before we move to the next segment. If you could name somebody, like, who's the epitome in your mind of having on your show, like to the point where you're like, whoa, like who would that be?
Dude, okay. For me, it would be, I would say, a 3-way tie, but I'll just pick one. I'll pick the top. I'll pick the top dog. It would probably be, no, I'm kind of excited because
it's a tough question, I'm sure.
No, it'd probably be Boyd Duckett, man.
Okay.
Because, he has had businesses his whole fishing career, and able to, like, those are the guys that I am it's very hard to make money in the fishing world, right? And kind of when you said your goals for the fishing, it would be cool to have a business and also be able to fish tournaments at a high level, right? So like the John Cruz, right? Those kinds of guys, the Gary, who's the guy who runs Phoenix Boats, but those kind of guys, I don't know. I'm like, man, those guys have it going, and they have to work very hard. Don't get me wrong, but someone like Boyd Duckett would be really cool because the rod company and then Major League Fishing and all this stuff going, and there's obviously a ton of controversy there. But I think that he's got it rocking and rolling as far as the business world goes. So he'd be a really, really cool top level guy, for sure.
Yeah, you get some top level knowledge coming from him. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, that would be cool.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
So we're gonna transition here. I got a little fun question segment I like to do as we wrap up. But before we do, where can people follow along? Not only on your personal social and also the podcast, and for any shout outs you may want to give.
Yeah, man. So I would say personal page, Instagram, Facebook, both are Adam Deakin. I think it's Adam_Deakin on Instagram. And then, as far as my podcast goes, I'm listed everywhere. Business from the Bass Boat Podcast. Would like to get onto YouTube, but currently I'm just on all of the podcast platforms, right? Apple, Spotify, all those. And then it also has an Instagram and a Facebook page under Business from the Bass Boat. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Everything will be linked down below so everybody can go and follow along, especially if you're a podcast enthusiast like both of us. You'll enjoy it. So that's awesome.
Exactly.
So, all right. Are you ready for – I have these two questions I like to ask everybody. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, but are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. So question number one, if you could invite any three people to sit down and have dinner with, to pick their brain, who would they be and why? Could be past, present, doesn't have to be fishing.
Gotcha. Yeah, I got you. Okay. I would probably say the all present people. I think it'd be cool to pick the brain of Gary Yamamoto.
Okay.
I think that'd be a really cool one. I really love all the baits, and I think he's figured out that whole deal. So it'd be cool to really go through the history of like the Senko, right, and those kinds of things. I think would be a blast to talk about. I think him. I think John Cruz, man, because just again with the same thing where it's someone who has a business in the fishing industry and is fishing at that high of a level, I think is incredible to me. And then lastly, probably be Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V guy. I don't know.
Okay.
For all that kind of stuff. I think that guy's. I mean, he's a little bit loud sometimes, but he I don't know. He doesn't. He speaks kind of the truth and what things are. So.
Yeah. I think Gary V is the most popular answer for that question.
Really?
Yeah.
Dude, I think it's funny to me too. Like I found Gary V, I don't know, in college sometime, but I've like continually noticed when you look at a Gary V Instagram post, how many of my fishing friends or people in the fishing industry have like added, to that, because it's one of those things, right? Like to make in the fishing industry, you have to love what you're doing because you're not going to make a ridiculous amount of money.
Oh,
it's one of those things that's just funny to me because more and more fishing friends that I have follow him as I go along.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's one of those things where people just kind of need like a pick me up, but they also just need the realism, They just need the truth, and that's where you're gonna get it. So it's pretty cool.
Yep.
So
exactly.
Yeah. So last question. This is what we do to wrap up each episode.
Okay.
Favorite fishing memory.
Favorite fishing. I didn't remember this one from your shows. I remember the food people you sit down with. The favorite fishing memory. I'll do a recent one that's not bass fishing related. So probably would be my favorite. Yeah, this one just makes the most sense because it was crazy. But I was in Florida on a work trip actually, and we were catching tarpon, and I had a big tarpon on, like 100 and 120 pound tarpon. not like a giant, but a good sized tarpon, and jumping, right, going crazy, and I'm on like 40-pound braid on a beefy spinning reel, and it's been like 25 minutes on this fish, and it gets to the boat, dude, and a freaking tiger shark comes up and is chasing this thing. So the guy that's on this work trip is like, flip your bail, and let that fish run, because it's a real problem with where we were, Boca Grande, Florida. These sharks are zoned in to literally know, man, to wait until someone hooks up with a tarpon, and then they just go nuts on the tarpon, right? And so he's like, see if you can get that fish to let it get away. And so I let my bail go, and the fish takes off, and it's swimming back and forth. And this shark, dude, comes right up to the boat and smokes this thing. I mean, just, and I got it on video and everything, but cut this fish in half. I mean, blood is all over the water. It was just crazy. It was crazy, and it sucked. Technically, I guess like a landing the fish, right, is getting to the leader on your saltwater stuff, and I don't know too much about saltwater, but anyways, so did land it, and then that all happened, and I just felt bad for the fish, but it was insane to see this thing just, I mean, half the size of the 30-foot boat that we were on come up and smoke the tarpon. Crazy.
It's insanity. Yeah, I've spent some time down in Boca Grande going fishing. My grandparents lived down in Placida. So we spent some time there, and we would like go to the beach and fish off the beach and see just the masses of people in that channel fishing for tarpon, just going nuts.
That's right where we were. I mean, we went out on that channel and then kept the fish. There was a storm that had come in, so the fish pulled off, and so they were out deep. It was that, you want to talk about imaging, man. I haven't really looked at, high-end electronics in the ocean, but this guy had hummingbirds on there, and you could see the outlines of the tarpon. I mean, you could literally go over them, and like, just like on if you're in a down scan seeing like, golf ball pings of bass on your water. I mean, they were straight up the shape of the tarpon. It was like, whoa, it's crazy.
It's ridiculous. It's just insanity. That is one species I've yet to cross off the list, and that's one I'm probably yearning for most, honestly.
Dude, I want to go do it with like a heavy bassing gear and like sort of like glide baits or something in front of them, because sometimes they can be really aggressive. That'd be crazy to catch them on a glide.
I got on a cool mag draft bite 2 days ago, an 8-inch mag draft bite up here, and I'm sitting there like I'm looking at this thing, and it reminds me of down there because we take the kayaks out and we take like these small little, like swim bait, like almost like Kitex. There was like Z-Mans, like the Z-Man had like these like a scented paddlers or something like that. Cool, and that's what we'd skip docks with for snook. And I'm sitting there looking at that 8-inch mag draft, and I'm like, this would be so much fun down south. Could you imagine just skipping that baby under docks and mangroves and just not even just seeing what you'd catch, but like the follows, the chaos that thing would ensue would be nuts.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I just want to say thank you for taking the time to come on. I really appreciate it, and I want to say thank you as well for having me on your show. That was a blast, and looking forward to having this little, fish season, tournament season go, and have you back on to do an update, see how things are going. Yeah.
Dude, same to you, man. No, I appreciate you having me on, and thanks for coming on to my show. It's been a blast, dude, and we'll absolutely keep in touch.
Oh yeah, 100%. We'll have to have you back on to see if you have any co-angler stories of how your events go for you, whether good or bad. Hopefully good.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, you take care. It was good talking to you.
All right, buddy.
Peace.
Take it easy. See ya.
All right. So hope you guys enjoyed that podcast with Adam. That was a blast to talk about a bunch of different things when it comes to tournament fishing, when it comes to podcasts, when it comes to fishing in Colorado. A whole 9 yards we got into it. So it was pretty awesome. Hope you guys enjoyed that. You guys took something out of that. If you enjoy podcasts and you want some more information, especially a business aspect, to learn how some behind the scenes stuff, so different things about the industry that you might not get on a lot of other podcasts, check out Adam's podcast, Business from the Bass Boat. You guys need to give it a listen, just give it a shot, because there's different podcasts popping up, and it's hard to kind of differentiate different ones from each other. But his is a clear and cut mission of being interested about the industry, the business, behind the scenes, how things operate. And I think that's really cool. I think that's what a lot of people are interested in, me for one. So go check that out. It's linked down below. Follow him on social media. He's a good dude. So also, if you want to see some good fish being caught in Colorado, definitely follow. So hope you guys enjoyed that podcast. Can't wait to have Adam back on to hear about some of his co-angler experiences once those tournaments are over with. But hope everyone is staying safe, staying healthy. Appreciate you guys again for watching and listening. If you're not already, subscribe to the Iceberg Outdoors YouTube channel. If you don't want to watch the podcast, you can listen to it on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Anchor app, Angler app, pretty much anything out there. You can listen to Serious Angler. So thank you guys again for watching and listening, and we'll see you next time.